Russian President Vladimir Putin left Brisbane today before the formal end of the two-day G20 summit, where he came under pressure from leaders over the Ukraine crisis. Putin said he was leaving before the release of the official communique because of the long flight to Russia and because he wanted to get some sleep.
Off in a huff. G20 leaders placed pressure on Putin over his government's backing for pro-Russian rebels in Ukraine, where the conflict has killed more than 4,000 people this year. Western leaders warned Putin that he risked more sanctions if he failed to end his country's backing for the separatists.
At this point, the sanctions that we have in place are biting plenty good. We retain the capabilities and we have our teams constantly looking at mechanisms in which to turn up additional pressure as necessary.
We will continue to maintain the sanctions against Russia. We'll continue to keep up the pressure, and that if Russia continues to destabilize Ukraine, further measures would follow.
Putin told a selected group of reporters on the side of the G20 summit today that there was a good chance of resolution in the Ukraine conflict, rejecting Western condemnation of Russia's role in the southeast of the country.
Today the situation in Ukraine, in my view, has good chances for resolution, no matter how strange it may sound, but certain structures had been established on both sides that could handle the tasks they are facing better, bearing in mind, first and foremost, the interests of the people who live in the territory of all Ukraine, including the southeast.
Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott closed the G20 summit by detailing economic pledges agreed by world leaders. The leaders agreed to boost their economies by at least 2.1% by 2018, adding $2 trillion to global economies. This is a pretty ambitious target for many G20 economies that are struggling with recession or very little growth. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi too made his presence felt at the summit, highlighting the importance of dealing with the black money problem, a stance that has been met with much appreciation in India. The world leaders also took some time off for some koala diplomacy prior to the commencement of the summit. Australian Prime Minister Tony Abbott introduced the animals to US President Barack Obama, Russian President Vladimir Putin and other world leaders, all of whom were pictured smiling and laughing as they held and petted the animals. However, as in past years, this year's G20 summit too was marred by angry protests. The G20 summit has become an annual gathering for protests of all sizes and on all sorts of issues.
I guess our message is the same to those leaders of those 20 nation states and the European Union, that they are responsible for the dispossession and the genocide and the bloodshed of indigenous peoples and oppressed peoples around this globe.
These protests are evidence to the fact that in spite of all the koala diplomacy and political handshakes, globally there is a growing belief that the G20 has done very little to resolve global problems or promote world peace.